My daughter Sophia called me worthless at her wedding reception in front of 250 guests. The microphone picked up every word as she thanked everyone except me, then looked directly at my table and said, "At least now I know what real worth looks like." I stood up to leave, humiliated beyond measure. But when I got to my car, I found an envelope on my windshield with my name on it. Inside were 4 photographs and a note that read, "Now you'll understand why she despises you. Check the safety deposit box. Key hidden in your garden shed, behind the paint cans." What I discovered there would reveal that my daughter's cruelty wasn't about our relationship at all. It was about a conspiracy that had been poisoning our family for 15 years, and I was the only one who didn't know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I woke up at 5:30 that Saturday morning in my small apartment in Riverside Gardens, excitement buzzing through my 70-year-old bones like electricity. Today was the day my only daughter, Sophia Elena Rodriguez, would marry her longtime boyfriend, James Chen, in what promised to be the wedding of the century in our little town of Willowbrook, Colorado. I'd been looking forward to this day for months, ever since Sophia had called me last winter with the news. "Papa," she'd said, using the childhood nickname that always made my heart skip. "James proposed. We're getting married in June at the Grandview Estate." I'd cried that day, thinking about how proud my late wife Carmen would have been to see our daughter in a wedding dress. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window as I carefully pressed my one good suit, the charcoal gray one I'd bought for Carmen's funeral 3 years ago. It was the only formal outfit I owned that still fit properly. Retirement hadn't been kind to my savings, but I'd managed to scrape together $8,000 from my pension to contribute to Sophia's dream wedding. It wasn't much compared to what James' family could afford, but it was everything I had. I polished my old black dress shoes until they gleamed, then spent 20 minutes wrestling with the tie Carmen had given me for our 40th anniversary. The burgundy silk felt smooth between my fingers, and for a moment, I could almost hear her voice guiding me through the complicated knots she'd tried so many times to teach me. By 7 o'clock, I was ready. The wedding wasn't until 4 in the afternoon, but I wanted everything to be perfect. I had plans to visit Carmen's grave first, to tell her about today, then stop by the florist to make sure the corsage I'd ordered for Sophia was ready. It was a small white orchid with baby's breath, just like the one Carmen had worn to our own wedding 43 years ago. As I drove through downtown Willowbrook toward peaceful meadows, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between Sophia and me over the past year. Our phone calls had become shorter, her visits less frequent. When I'd asked about wedding planning, she'd give me vague answers about venues and flowers, never really including me in the details. "It's just stress, Papa," she'd said the last time I'd brought it up. "Planning a wedding is overwhelming. James's mother is helping with most of it." I'd nodded and smiled, but inside I felt the familiar sting of being pushed to the sidelines of my daughter's life. At Carmen's grave, I knelt on the damp grass and arranged the fresh marigolds I'd brought from my small garden. "Our baby girl is getting married today, mi amor," as she whispered to the simple granite headstone. "I wish you could see her. She's so beautiful, just like you." The morning air was crisp with the promise of summer, and I could hear birds singing in the oak trees that surrounded the cemetery. I told Carmen about the dress Sophia had chosen, about how happy she seemed with James, about my hopes that maybe after the wedding stress was over, my daughter and I could rebuild the closeness we'd once shared. But even as I spoke the words, doubt gnawed at my stomach like hunger. At Petals and Stems on Main Street, Mrs. Henderson greeted me with a sympathetic smile. She'd known Carmen for years and had provided flowers for every important occasion in our family's life. "The corsage is beautiful, Eduardo," she said, showing me the delicate orchid arrangement in its clear plastic box. "Sophia will love it." But when I asked if she'd seen Sophia recently for any last-minute flower arrangements, Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted slightly. "Oh, well, the bride's mother took care of all the floral orders. Mrs. Chen made it very clear she was handling everything personally." "Mrs. Chen?" I asked, confused. But Sophia's mother passed away 3 years ago. Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez. I meant James's mother, of course. She's been very involved in all the wedding preparations. She even had me change the corsage color 3 times before settling on white. Something cold settled in my chest. I'd ordered the white corsage specifically to match Carmen's memory. If someone had been changing the details, why hadn't Sophia told me? By 2 o'clock, I was driving up the winding road to Grandview Estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion that had been converted into an event venue. The building sat on 20 acres of manicured gardens overlooking the Willowbrook Valley, with the Rocky Mountains creating a dramatic backdrop in the distance.
Cars were already arriving, expensive sedans and SUVs that made my 15-year-old Honda Civic look shabby by comparison. I recognized some faces from Sophia's high school graduation and a few family friends, but many of the guests were strangers to me. James's family and friends, I assumed, people from the social circles that my daughter now moved in. I parked in the designated guest area and made my way toward the main building, the corsage box tucked carefully under my arm. The venue was magnificent, with white silk draping the entrance and elaborate floral arrangements flanking the doors. I could see why it would cost a fortune to rent. Inside, the lobby was filled with elegantly dressed people sipping champagne and speaking in the refined tones of money and education. I felt immediately out of place in my old suit, like a maintenance worker who'd wandered into a corporate boardroom by mistake. "Eduardo!" A familiar voice called out across the room. I turned to see my sister, Isabella, approaching with her husband, Miguel. At least there were some familiar faces here. "Bella," I said, embracing my younger sister. "You look beautiful." She was wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her hair was styled in an elaborate updo that must have taken hours to create. "You clean up pretty well yourself, hermano," she said, with a warm smile. "Are you excited to walk Sophia down the aisle?" I blinked. Walk her down the aisle? Isabella's expression faltered. "I mean, aren't you giving her away? You're her father." I realized I didn't actually know. In all our conversations about the wedding, Sophia had never mentioned who would be walking her down the aisle. I'd assumed it would be me. But now that I thought about it, she'd never actually asked. "I'm sure we'll figure it out," I said, weakly. An usher, a young man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, approached us with a practiced smile. "Are you family of the bride or groom?" "Bride," I said. "I'm her father." The usher consulted his clipboard. "Rodriguez, Eduardo?" "Yes." "You're at table 12, he said, pointing toward the back of the reception area visible through French doors. "The ceremony will begin in about an hour in the garden pavilion." Table 12. Not the front row for the ceremony, not the family table. Table 12, where I'd be sitting with Isabella and Miguel and a handful of distant relatives I barely knew. As we made our way to the garden, I watched the other guests being seated. James's parents were in the front row, of course, along with what appeared to be his grandparents and siblings. But where was I supposed to sit? Surely the father of the bride belonged in the front row, not hidden in the back like an afterthought. "Eduardo?" A familiar voice called out across the room. I turned to see my sister, Isabella, approaching with her husband, Miguel. At least there were some familiar faces here. "Bella," I said, embracing my younger sister. "You look beautiful." She was wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her hair was styled in an elaborate updo that must have taken hours to create. "You clean up pretty well yourself, hermano," she said, with a warm smile. "Are you excited to walk Sophia down the aisle?" I blinked. Walk her down the aisle? Isabella's expression faltered. "I mean, aren't you giving her away? You're her father." I I realized I didn't actually know. In all our conversations about the wedding, Sophia had never mentioned who would be walking her down the aisle. I'd assumed it would be me. But now that I thought about it, she'd never actually asked. "I'm sure we'll figure it out," I said, weakly. An usher, a young man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, approached us with a practiced smile. "Are you family of the bride or groom?" "Bride," I said. "I'm her father." The usher consulted his clipboard. "Rodriguez, Eduardo?" "Yes." "You're at table 12, he said, pointing toward the back of the reception area, visible through French doors. "The ceremony will begin in about an hour in the garden pavilion." Table 12. Not the front row for the ceremony, not the family table. Table 12, where I'd be sitting with Isabella and Miguel and a handful of distant relatives I barely knew. As we made our way to the garden, I watched the other guests being seated. James's parents were in the front row, of course, along with what appeared to be his grandparents and siblings. But where was I supposed to sit? Surely the father of the bride belonged in the front row, not hidden in the back like an afterthought. "Eduardo," Isabella whispered as we found our assigned seats 6 rows back from the altar, "did Sophia not save you a spot up front?" I forced a smile. "She probably just wanted to keep the front row simple," I said. But my voice sounded hollow even to me. The string quartet began playing and guests turned to watch the processional. First came the bridesmaids, 4 young women in soft lavender dresses, who I recognized as Sophia's college friends. Then the groomsmen, James's brothers and college roommates, all looking like they had stepped out of a magazine. Finally, the wedding march began, and everyone rose to their feet. My heart pounded as I waited to see my daughter, my beautiful Sophia, walking to her new life. But she wasn't alone. James's father, William Chen, a distinguished man in his early 60s with silver hair and an expensive tuxedo, had his arm linked through Sophia's. She looked radiant in her flowing white gown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on James, who was beaming at the altar. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The father-daughter dance I'd been imagining, the moment I'd been preparing for, the honor that should have been mine by right and tradition, it had been given to someone else, and nobody had even told me. Isabella grabbed my arm as I swayed slightly. "Eduardo, are you okay?" I managed to nod, but I wasn't okay. I was watching my daughter's wedding from the cheap seats, while another man fulfilled the role I'd dreamed of playing since the day she was born. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. The minister spoke about love and commitment. James and Sophia exchanged vows that made everyone cry, except me. I was too numb to cry, too shocked to process what was happening. When they kissed and the crowd erupted in applause, I clapped mechanically, like a robot going through the motions. The cocktail hour felt endless. I wandered around the reception area, holding a glass of wine I wasn't drinking, trying to make conversation with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone kept asking me how proud I must be, how beautiful the ceremony was, how lucky I was to gain such a wonderful son-in-law. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things, but inside, I felt like I was drowning. How did I become such an outsider in my own daughter's life? When had I stopped mattering enough to be included in the most important day of her life? "Mr. Rodriguez," a photographer approached me with a professional smile. "We're gathering family members for some formal photos. Could you join us?" Finally, something that acknowledged my existence. I followed him to a designated area where Sophia was posing with various family members. She looked even more beautiful up close, the afternoon light making her skin glow and her smile radiant. "Papa," she said when she saw me, but her tone was polite rather than warm.
"Glad I could make it? To my own daughter's wedding?" "You look beautiful, mija," I said, offering her the corsage box. "I brought this for you, A white orchid, like your mother wore at our wedding. Sophia glanced at the box, but didn't take it. That's sweet, Papa, but I already have a corsage. Mrs. Chen had one made to match my bouquet. Mrs. Chen again. I looked around and spotted James' mother, an elegant Asian woman in a sophisticated cream-colored dress, directing the photographer like she was running a photo shoot. Just hold on to it, Sophia said dismissively. Maybe Isabella would like it. The photographer positioned us for several shots, but I noticed that in most of them, I was placed at the edges, almost like an afterthought. William Chen, meanwhile, was positioned prominently next to Sophia in several poses, their arms linked in the same way they'd walked down the aisle. Dinner was served at 8 o'clock in the main reception hall, a grand room with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. The tables were set with fine china and multiple silverware settings that reminded me of fancy restaurants I'd never been able to afford. Table 12 was in the back corner, far from the head table where Sophia and James sat with their wedding party. I could barely see my daughter from where I was sitting, and the distance felt symbolic of everything that had gone wrong between us. "The food is incredible," Miguel said, trying to make conversation as we worked through the 5-course meal. "This must have cost a fortune." I thought about my $8,000 contribution and wondered if it had even made a dent in the total cost. Looking around at the elaborate decorations, the extensive floral arrangements, the open bar stocked with top-shelf liquor, I estimated the wedding had cost at least $80,000, maybe more. "Sophia always deserved the best," I said quietly. As dinner wound down, I kept watching the head table, hoping Sophia might look in my direction, maybe give me a smile or a wave. But she seemed completely absorbed in conversation with her new husband and his family. It was like I didn't exist. After dinner, the best man stood up with a microphone to begin the traditional toasts. He told funny stories about James in college, about how he'd known from the moment James met Sophia that she was the one. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Then James's father, William Chen, took the microphone. His voice was smooth and confident, the voice of a man accustomed to being heard. "I want to talk about family," he began, looking directly at Sophia. "When James first brought Sophia home, my wife and I were immediately struck by her grace, her intelligence, and her strength. She had overcome so much in her life, and yet she remained kind and generous." I frowned. Overcome so much? What was he talking about? "Sophia has shown us what it means to rise above circumstances, to refuse to let the failures of others define your worth. She has chosen to build a new kind of family with James, one based on mutual respect and support." The failures of others. My chest tightened as I realized he might be talking about me. "To James and Sophia," William continued, raising his glass, "may you always remember that family is not about obligation or guilt, but about love that lifts you up rather than holding you back." The applause was thunderous, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. Was he talking about me? Had Sophia told him I was holding her back? Then Sophia stood up. My heart raced with anticipation. Finally, she would acknowledge me, thank me for my support, tell everyone how much her father meant to her. She looked radiant under the chandeliers, the microphone steady in her manicured hands. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible," she began, her voice clear and confident. "First, my incredible husband, James, who has shown me what true partnership looks like." Applause. "The Chens, who have welcomed me into their family with open arms and taught me what unconditional support really means." More applause. "My wedding party, who have been by my side through everything." She went through a long list, the venue coordinator, the caterer, her college friends, her bridesmaids, even her hairdresser. Each acknowledgement was met with smiles and applause from the crowd. Then her eyes found mine across the room. "You know," she said, her voice ticking on a different tone, "people always say that family is everything. But I've learned that real family isn't about DNA or tradition. It's about who shows up when you need them, who puts your happiness before their own expectations." My stomach dropped. I'm grateful to have learned the difference between people who say they love you and people who actually demonstrate love through their actions." She paused, still looking directly at me. "At least now I know what real worth looks like." The words hit me like a physical blow. The room seemed to tilt, and I could feel faces turning towards me, people trying to figure out who she was talking about. Isabella grabbed my arm again, her face pale with shock. "To those who have shown me what genuine love and support look like," she continued, raising her glass and looking away from me toward the Chen family table. "And to learning that sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the family you're born with."
I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire hall. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The clinking of glasses fell silent. Every person in that room turned to stare at the old man in the cheap suit standing at table 12. Sophia stopped talking, the microphone still in her hand. For a moment, our eyes met across the room, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not regret, not sadness, but something closer to satisfaction. My legs felt like they were made of lead as I walked toward the exit. Each step seemed to take forever, the distance to the door stretching endlessly in front of me. I could feel the weight of 250 pairs of eyes following my movement, could hear the whispers starting to buzz around the room like angry bees. Behind me, Sophia's voice resumed over the microphone, smooth and unaffected, as if nothing had happened. As I was saying, to those who matter most, but I was already pushing through the heavy oak doors into the cool evening air. The parking lot was quiet, except for the distant sound of music and laughter drifting from the reception hall. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get my key into the car door. 43 years of marriage to Carmen, 28 years of raising Sophia, and this was how it ended? With public humiliation and the realization that my own daughter saw me as worthless? I was fumbling with my seatbelt when I noticed it. A manila envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. My name was written on it in block letters, Eduardo Rodriguez. My heart was still pounding from the humiliation, but curiosity made me get out of the car and retrieve the envelope. The parking lot was quiet except for a few other cars, and I looked around to see if anyone was watching. But the night was still, broken only by the sound of crickets chirping in the nearby bushes. Inside the envelope were 4 photographs and a folded piece of paper. The first photograph was old, maybe 15 years, showing a woman I didn't recognize sitting in what looked like a law office. She was blonde, probably in her 40s, well-dressed, signing some kind of legal document. The second photo showed the same woman, more recent, standing outside a building I didn't recognize. She was holding what appeared to be a thick file folder. The third photograph made my blood run cold. It showed Sophia, maybe 18 or 19 years old, sitting across from the same blonde woman in what looked like a coffee shop. They were leaning toward each other, deep in conversation, and Sophia was holding what appeared to be a stack of papers. The fourth photo was the most recent. It showed Sophia and the mystery woman standing outside a bank, both of them smiling. The timestamp in the corner indicated it had been taken just 6 months ago. I'd never seen this woman before in my life, but clearly Sophia had been meeting with her for years. My hands were trembling as I unfolded the paper. The message was typed on what looked like a computer printer. Eduardo Rodriguez, your daughter has been lying to you for 15 years. The woman in these photos is Victoria Mansfield, a private investigator hired by your late wife's sister, Patricia Valdez, to build a case against you. They have been filling Sophia's head with fabricated stories about your past, convincing you that you are responsible for your wife Carmen's death, and that you have been hiding money that rightfully belongs to her. Patricia Valdez has been working to turn your daughter against you since Carmen died, using fake documents and manufactured evidence to make you look like a negligent husband and father. Sophia believes you let her mother die and stole her inheritance. The truth is in safety deposit box 847 at First National Bank on Elm Street. The key is hidden in your garden shed behind the paint cans, taped to the back wall. Look for the file marked Carmen Rodriguez, The Real Truth. You'll find everything there. The real medical records, the financial documents, and proof of the conspiracy against you. Your daughter's hatred isn't about anything you actually did. It's about lies that have been carefully planted in her mind for over a decade. Patricia wants Carmen's life insurance money and the house, and she's been using Sophia to get it. Check the safety deposit box. Learn the truth, then decide what you want to do with it. I read the note 3 times before it began to sink in. Patricia Valdez, Carmen's younger sister who had always resented our marriage, who had claimed Carmen's family never approved of me because I was just a maintenance worker and not good enough for her sister. Patricia, who had disappeared from our lives shortly after Carmen's funeral, claiming she needed time to grieve. Patricia, who had apparently been plotting against me for the past 3 years. The drive back to my apartment complex took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced through every interaction I'd had with Sophia since Carmen's death, looking for signs I'd missed. The way she had started questioning me about Carmen's medical care, the sudden interest in Carmen's finances, the gradual cooling of our relationship that I had attributed to normal grief and adjustment. Had it all been orchestrated? I thought about the woman in the photographs, Victoria Mansfield, a private investigator. Had she been following me, building a case based on lies and manufactured evidence? And what kind of lies could possibly make Sophia believe I was responsible for her mother's death?
Carmen had died of pancreatic cancer after a 6-month battle. I'd been by her side every day, held her hand through every chemotherapy session, slept in hospital chairs for weeks. How could anyone twist that into negligence? My apartment complex, Riverside Gardens, was a modest collection of 2-story buildings that housed mostly retirees and young families just starting out. I'd moved here after selling the family house, the house where Carmen and I had raised Sophia, where we'd planned to grow old together. I'd sold it 6 months after Carmen's death because the memories were too painful, and because Sophia had convinced me it was time to downsize and simplify. Now I wondered if that decision had been influenced by Patricia's manipulation as well. My small garden plot behind Building C was my one luxury in this new life. I'd grown tomatoes and peppers, marigolds and roses, trying to recreate the beautiful garden Carmen had tended for 20 years. The small storage shed had come with the apartment and held my gardening tools, fertilizer, and painting supplies left over from touching up the apartment walls. The shed was barely big enough to stand up in, cramped with tools and supplies I rarely used. In the back corner, behind a row of paint cans I'd bought 2 years ago when I'd repainted my living room, I felt along the wooden wall with my fingers. There it was, a small key taped to the back wall, exactly where the note said it would be. The key was attached to a numbered tag, 847. I sat on the small wooden stool in my shed holding the key and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Someone had rented a safety deposit box in my name, hidden the key in my shed, and somehow gotten access to my garden to do it. Someone who knew about my routines, my living situation, my family history. But who? And why now, on the day of Sophia's wedding? The note mentioned that Patricia wanted Carmen's life insurance money and the house, but the life insurance, a modest $50,000 policy, had gone directly to Sophia as the designated beneficiary. And I'd sold the house, using the proceeds to pay for my apartment and to contribute to Sophia's education, and now her wedding. There wasn't much money left to fight over. Unless there was something I didn't know about. I thought about Carmen's final weeks, how she'd spent hours going through old documents and papers, organizing everything for after she was gone. She'd been so methodical about it, so careful to make sure all the legal and financial details were handled. Had she discovered something? Hidden something? Left something behind that I didn't know about?
It was almost midnight when I finally locked up the shed and went inside my apartment. The key felt heavy in my pocket, weighted with possibilities and fears I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I poured myself a glass of the cheap whiskey I kept for nights when sleep wouldn't come and sat in my recliner by the window. Outside, the complex was quiet, except for the occasional car passing on the main road. Most of my neighbors were asleep, preparing for church services in the morning or planning quiet Sunday activities with their families. I should have been planning the same thing. Instead, I was holding a key to secrets I'd never known existed, secrets that apparently explained why my daughter had just humiliated me in front of 250 people. The photographs were spread out on my coffee table like pieces of a puzzle I didn't understand. Sophia meeting with a private investigator, legal documents being signed, a 15-year conspiracy that had turned my only child against me based on lies I couldn't even imagine. But did I really want to know the truth? Sometimes ignorance was a mercy. Sometimes the truth was more painful than the lies people told to spare your feelings. I thought about Sophia's words at the wedding reception. At least now I know what real worth looks like. The contempt in her voice, the satisfaction on her face when I stood up to leave. If the note was correct, she believed I was responsible for her mother's death. She believed I had stolen from her, lied to her, failed her in the most fundamental ways a father could fail a daughter. How do you come back from that kind of betrayal, even if it's based on lies? I dozed fitfully in my chair and woke up at dawn with a crick in my neck and the key still in my hand. Sunday morning light filtered through my apartment windows, casting long shadows across the photographs that still lay scattered on my coffee table. First National Bank on Elm Street opened at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings for limited services. I had 3 hours to decide whether I wanted to open whatever Pandora's box was waiting for me in safety deposit box 847. I made coffee and sat down to really study the photographs. In the coffee shop picture, Sophia looked young, maybe college age. If the investigation had been going on for 15 years, as the note claimed, it had started when she was just 17 or 18. Her entire adult relationship with me had been poisoned by whatever lies Patricia and this Victoria Mansfield had told her. The bank photo was more recent, just 6 months ago. Sophia looked confident, determined, like someone who had finally gotten the answers she'd been looking for. But if those answers were based on fabricated evidence, then her confidence was built on quicksand.
I thought about calling her, trying to explain, asking for a chance to defend myself against accusations I didn't even fully understand yet. But after last night's public humiliation, I doubted she would take my call. And what could I say? I don't know what you think I did, but I didn't do it? That was hardly a compelling defense. The key seemed to pulse in my palm like a heartbeat. Whatever was in that safety deposit box might give me the ammunition I needed to fight back against 15 years of lies. Or it might confirm that somehow, some way, I really was the villain in this story. At 8:45 a.m., I was sitting in my Honda Civic in the parking lot of First National Bank, watching employees arrive and unlock the doors. The bank was a solid brick building that had served Willowbrook for over 50 years, the kind of institution that projected stability and trust. I'd never rented a safety deposit box here. In fact, I'd never rented a safety deposit box anywhere. Carmen and I had kept our important documents in a fireproof safe in our bedroom closet: birth certificates, marriage license, insurance policies, mortgage papers. Simple people living simple lives with simple needs. So who had rented box 847? And how had they gotten access to my garden shed to hide the key? The security guard unlocked the front doors precisely at 9 o'clock. I waited another 5 minutes, watching other customers enter, before I worked up the courage to follow them inside. "Good morning," the teller said with professional cheerfulness. "How can I help you today?" "I need to access a safety deposit box," I said, sliding the key across the marble counter. "Box 847.
She examined the key and checked something on her computer screen. "Mr. Rodriguez, of course. You'll need to sign in and show identification." She handed me a clipboard with a signature card. My hands were shaking slightly as I signed my name, and I was surprised to see that there were already several signatures on the card, all in my handwriting, dating back over 2 years. But I'd never been here before in my life. The safety deposit box room was in the basement, accessed by a narrow staircase and a heavy steel door. The teller, a young woman named Jenny, according to her name tag, led me down a hallway lined with numbered metal boxes of various sizes. "Here we are," she said, stopping at box 847. "You'll need both keys, yours and the bank's master key, to open it." She inserted the bank's key and waited for me to insert mine. When I turned it, there was a soft click and the metal drawer slid out smoothly. "I'll give you privacy," she said. "Just press the call button when you're finished." The box was larger than I expected, about the size of a shoebox, and it was heavy when I lifted it out. Inside the viewing room, I set it on the table and took a deep breath before lifting the lid. The box was packed with documents, photographs, and what appeared to be audio cassette tapes. On top was a manila folder labeled "Eduardo Rodriguez, read first," in Carmen's familiar handwriting. My heart stopped. Carmen's handwriting. My wife had created this safety deposit box. Inside the folder was a letter addressed to me, written in Carmen's careful script on her personal stationery, the cream-colored paper with small roses in the corners that she'd used for special occasions. "My beloved Eduardo, if you are reading this, then something has happened to me, and Patricia has started her campaign to turn Sophia against you. I pray that you never have to open this box, but I fear my sister's jealousy runs deeper than family love. I have been sick for 3 months now, but I haven't told you because I wanted to protect you from worry as long as possible. The doctors say it is pancreatic cancer, and the prognosis is not good. I may have 6 months, perhaps less. But that is not why I'm writing this letter. I am writing because I have discovered that Patricia has been planning for years to contest my will and claim that you manipulated me into leaving everything to you and Sophia. She believes that as my only living blood relative, she should inherit my life insurance and my half of the house. What she doesn't know is that I have been documenting everything. Every conversation, every hint of her resentment, every suggestion that you were not good enough for our family. I have hired a private investigator named David Chen. Yes, the same David Chen whose son James is dating our Sophia, to help me gather evidence of Patricia's intentions. The documents in this box will prove that Patricia has been forging medical records to make it appear that you neglected my medical care, falsifying financial documents to suggest you have been stealing from me, and creating a fictional narrative designed to turn Sophia against you after my death. I have also discovered that Patricia has been meeting secretly with Sophia since she started college, gradually introducing her to a woman named Victoria Mansfield, who Patricia claims is a family friend, but who is actually the private investigator Patricia hired to build the case against you. Eduardo, mi amor, Sophia doesn't know Victoria is working for Patricia. She believes she's being a good daughter by investigating her father. She has no idea she's being manipulated by her aunt's greed and jealousy. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the letter, and my vision was blurring with tears. Carmen had known. She had known about the cancer, known about Patricia's plans, known that our daughter was being turned against me, and she had tried to protect me from beyond the grave. The rest of the box contained everything Carmen had promised: copies of my real medical records and receipts showing that I had paid for every medical bill, driven Carmen to every appointment, and spent my entire savings on experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Financial documents proving that I had never touched Carmen's personal accounts or hidden any money.
audio recordings of phone conversations between Patricia and Victoria Mansfield discussing their strategy for proving Eduardo's negligence and theft. But the most damning evidence was a folder labeled Forged Documents. Inside were photocopies of the fake medical records, fake financial statements, and fake legal documents that Victoria had been showing to Sophia. Side by side with the real documents, the forgeries were obvious. Different fonts, inconsistent dates, medical terminology that didn't match the actual treatments Carmen had received. There was also a handwritten timeline in Carmen's careful script documenting every meeting between Patricia, Victoria, and Sophia over the past 4 years. The meetings had started innocently enough, catching up with family and helping Sophia understand her mother's wishes. But gradually they had become strategy sessions designed to convince Sophia that her father was a liar and a thief. The most recent entry was dated just 2 weeks before Carmen's death. Patricia called today to say that Victoria has convinced Sophia to demand a full financial audit after the funeral. She wants Sophia to believe that Eduardo has been hiding money and that he convinced me not to leave anything to Patricia in my will. Victoria has prepared fake bank statements showing Eduardo withdrawing large sums of money without my knowledge. Eduardo, my love, none of this is true. You have been the most honest, faithful husband a woman could ask for. Please use this evidence to show Sophia the truth. With trembling hands, I picked up one of the cassette tapes labeled Patricia and Victoria, March 15th. Carmen had somehow recorded phone conversations between Patricia and the private investigator, documenting their conspiracy in their own words. I found an old cassette player in the box. Carmen must have bought it specifically for this purpose. When I pressed play, Patricia's voice filled the small room, sharp with excitement and malice. Patricia was saying, "She's starting to believe it. Sophia asked me yesterday if I thought Eduardo had been hiding money from Carmen. I told her that her mother had always been too trusting, too willing to let Eduardo handle all the finances." Victoria's voice responded, professional and calculating. "The fake bank statements are working perfectly. I've created a pattern that shows Eduardo gradually moving money into accounts that Sophia doesn't know about. When we add the forged medical records showing that he delayed Carmen's treatment to save money, we'll have a compelling case for financial elder abuse. And Sophia will demand that Eduardo be cut out of the will entirely? Better than that, she'll demand that he be prosecuted. With the evidence I'm manufacturing, we could probably get him charged with neglect and theft. At minimum, he'll lose any claim to Carmen's assets, and Sophia will turn to you as her only trustworthy family member." I felt sick. These women were planning to have me arrested, to destroy my reputation and my relationship with my daughter. Also, Patricia could get her hands on Carmen's life insurance money. The second tape was even worse. It was dated just 1 month before Carmen's death, and it contained detailed plans for the post-funeral manipulation. "The key is patience," Victoria was explaining. "We can't move too quickly or Sophia might get suspicious. We'll start with small suggestions. Questions about her father's behavior during Carmen's illness, hints that something doesn't add up financially. Then we'll gradually introduce the evidence." "How long will it take?" Patricia asked. 2 to 3 years to completely turn her against him, maybe longer. We want her to feel like she's discovering the truth herself, not like we're pushing an agenda. By the time we're finished, Sophia will see Eduardo as the enemy and you as your savior." Patricia laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Carmen always thought she was so smart, choosing that maintenance worker over someone from her own social class. She'll be rolling in her grave when she realizes her precious Eduardo lost everything because of his own greed. But Carmen hadn't been rolling in her grave. She'd been fighting back, even while dying of cancer, even while her own sister plotted against her husband. The financial documents in the box told the real story of our marriage. Far from hiding money, I had liquidated my retirement accounts to pay for Carmen's experimental treatments. I had taken out a second mortgage on our house to cover medical bills that insurance wouldn't pay. I had worked double shifts for months to keep us afloat financially while caring for my dying wife. The fake documents Victoria had created showed exactly the opposite: mysterious withdrawals, hidden accounts, suspicious transfers that made it look like I was stealing from Carmen when she was too sick to notice. The forgeries were sophisticated, but when placed side by side with the real bank records, the deception was obvious.
Carmen had also included copies of all her medical records, showing that I had been present at every appointment, had advocated aggressively for additional treatments, and had followed every doctor's recommendation to the letter. The fake medical records Victoria had created suggested that I had delayed treatment, refused expensive procedures, and been absent during crucial medical decisions. It was a comprehensive character assassination designed to transform me from a devoted husband into a neglectful monster in my daughter's eyes. But the most shocking revelation was buried near the bottom of the box. Documents showing that James Chen, Sophia's new husband, was the son of David Chen, the private investigator Carmen had hired to expose Patricia's plot. David Chen had been working for Carmen, not Patricia. He had been gathering evidence of the conspiracy for months before Carmen's death. But somehow, his son James had become romantically involved with Sophia, creating a conflict of interest that had apparently compromised the entire investigation. There were emails between Carmen and David Chen discussing this complication. David had wanted to withdraw from the case when he learned about his son's relationship with Sophia, but Carmen had convinced him to continue, believing that James might be able to protect Sophia from Patricia's influence. Instead, it appeared that James had been feeding information about his father's investigation back to Patricia and Victoria, allowing them to stay one step ahead and adjust their strategy accordingly. The wedding I had just attended, the wedding I had helped pay for, had been a celebration of the union between my daughter and the son of the man who was supposed to be protecting her from manipulation. At the very bottom of the box was one more letter from Carmen, this one dated just 3 days before her death. Eduardo, if you are reading this, then David Chen's investigation has failed and Patricia's plan has succeeded. I am dying as I write this letter, and I fear I will not live long enough to stop what is happening to our family. I want you to know that everything we built together was real. Our love was real. Sophia's love for you was real before it was poisoned by lies. You were the best husband and father any woman could ask for, and nothing Patricia says or does can change that truth. But I also want you to know that you have a choice. You can use this evidence to fight back, to expose Patricia's lies and try to win Sophia back. Or you can let our daughter live with her hatred, protecting her from the knowledge that her beloved aunt has been manipulating her for years. I don't know which choice is right. Fighting back might destroy Sophia's relationship with Patricia, the only family she thinks she has left. But letting the lies stand means you will spend the rest of your life carrying the blame for crimes you never committed. Whatever you decide, know that I love you. Know that you gave me 43 years of happiness, and that our daughter was lucky to have you as a father, even if she no longer remembers that. Use this evidence wisely, mi amor, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. I sat in that small bank room for over an hour, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that had stolen the last 3 years of my life. The truth was overwhelming, not just the facts of Patricia's deception, but the realization that Carmen had known everything and had tried to protect me even as she was dying. My daughter's hatred wasn't about anything I had actually done. It was the product of years of careful manipulation by people who saw her grief as an opportunity for profit. Every cruel word, every cold look, every moment of feeling like a stranger in my own daughter's life, it had all been orchestrated by my sister-in-law's greed and jealousy. But knowing the truth didn't automatically fix anything. Sophia had been living with these lies for years. They had shaped her understanding of her childhood, her relationship with her mother, and her feelings about her father. Could evidence and documents undo years of emotional conditioning? And what about James? If he was working with Patricia and Victoria, then Sophia's marriage was built on deception as well. Did she know about her husband's role in the conspiracy? Or was she as much a victim as I was? Before leaving the bank, I made a decision that I immediately regretted. I called Sophia. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice cold and distant. "What do you want, Papa?" The word Papa stung because it carried no warmth, no affection. It was just a label, empty of all the love it had once contained. "Mija, we need to talk. There are things you don't know, things about your mother and your Aunt Patricia." "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't you dare bring Mama into this. You've done enough damage." "Sophia, please, I have evidence." "Evidence of what? More lies? More ways to make yourself look like the victim?" Her voice was rising, sharp with anger. "I know what you did, Papa. I know how you treated Mama when she was sick. I know about the money you stole, the treatments you refused to pay for. Do you think I'm stupid? Your Aunt Patricia has been lying to you. She hired someone to forge documents, to make me look guilty of things I never did. I can prove it."
No, I'm done with your manipulations. I'm done with your excuses. Stay away from me, Papa. Stay away from my husband. Stay away from my life. You've caused enough pain. The line went dead. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot. Carmen's evidence spread across the passenger seat, and realized that the truth wasn't enough. The truth was just facts, and facts couldn't compete with years of emotional manipulation and carefully crafted lies. Sophia didn't want to hear evidence. She wanted to believe that her Aunt Patricia loved her and that her father had betrayed her. The lies gave her someone to blame for her mother's death, someone to hate instead of accepting the random cruelty of cancer. But I also realized something else. Carmen had given me a choice, and I had to make it carefully. I could fight back with everything I had, expose Patricia's conspiracy, and risk destroying Sophia's relationship with the only family she thought she had left, or I could carry the weight of false accusations for the rest of my life, protecting my daughter from the knowledge that she had been manipulated by the people she trusted most. Neither choice would give me my daughter back. The damage was too deep, the lies too well established. But one choice might preserve what little family she had left, even if that family was built on deception. The sun was setting over Willowbrook as I made my decision. Tomorrow, I would decide whether to fight or to disappear, whether to expose the truth or to let the lies stand. But tonight, I would go home to my small apartment and grieve for the daughter I had lost, not to death, but to something worse, to the living death of believing that your father never loved you at all. And that's where part one of this story ends, not with answers, but with the heaviest question a parent can face. When the truth would destroy the last of your child's happiness, is love about fighting for yourself or protecting them from who they really can't bear to know? Because sometimes the people we trust most are the ones destroying us from the inside. And sometimes the greatest act of love is carrying someone else's sins so they don't have to live with the truth. The evidence was in my hands, but the real question wasn't whether I could prove my innocence. It was whether I should. I woke up at 5 a.m. with Carmen's evidence spread across my kitchen table and a decision burning in my chest. For 3 years, I'd been living under the weight of my daughter's hatred, accepting blame for crimes I never committed. But Carmen had given me the weapons to fight back, and I wasn't going to waste her final gift. The first call I made was to David Chen, private investigator. His number was in Carmen's files, along with notes about his investigation into Patricia's conspiracy. When he answered, his voice was gravelly and tired. "Chen Investigations." "Mr. Chen, this is Eduardo Rodriguez, Carmen Rodriguez's husband." A long pause. "Mr. Rodriguez, I've been expecting your call. Have you? Because your son just married my daughter while believing I'm a monster." Another pause, heavier this time. "We need to meet, today. There are things you need to understand about what's been happening to your family." "I understand plenty. I found Carmen's safety deposit box.
I heard the recordings. Jesus, she actually did it. His voice carried a mixture of relief and dread. Can you come to my office? 2 o'clock? I'll be there. And Mr. Chen, bring everything you have. David Chen's office sat in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service, the kind that handled divorce cases and insurance fraud, rather than elaborate family conspiracies. The waiting room smelled like coffee and disappointment, with metal filing cabinets lining every wall. David Chen was Asian American, early 60s, with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the weary expression of a man who'd seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. On his desk sat a framed photo of James Chen, in graduation robes, smiling next to his proud parents. Before we start, David said, gesturing for me to sit, I want you to know that my son had no idea what he was really doing. James thought he was protecting Sophia from a negligent father, protecting her from lies your investigation was supposed to expose. David opened a thick file folder. Carmen hired me 3 years ago, right after her cancer diagnosis. She was worried about Patricia's sudden interest in her finances and will. What I found was worse than either of us expected. He spread documents across his desk like evidence in a trial. Patricia had already hired Victoria Mansfield and developed a comprehensive plan to contest Carmen's will on grounds of undue influence. They were going to claim you manipulated your dying wife into cutting Patricia out of her inheritance. But Carmen left everything to Sophia, not me. Patricia didn't care. She wanted guardianship over Sophia's inheritance, claiming you were an unfit father who had financially and medically abused your wife. David pulled out a timeline that matched the one that Carmen had created. The manipulation started before Carmen even died. Patricia and Victoria began meeting with Sophia during college breaks, initially as concerned family members. When did it escalate?
Gradually, they planted seeds about your handling of Carmen's medical care, suggested you cared more about money than treatment. Victoria is exceptionally skilled at psychological manipulation. David showed me more documents. Victoria created forged medical records, fake financial statements, manufactured evidence of neglect and theft. By the time Carmen died, Sophia already suspected you were hiding something. And your son? David's face darkened. That's where everything went wrong. James met Sophia junior year. When I discovered their relationship, I tried to withdraw from the case due to conflict of interest. Carmen begged me to continue, saying the investigation was too important. So you kept working while your son dated the target's daughter. I made a critical error. I trusted James to keep my investigation confidential. Instead, when Victoria approached him through Patricia, claiming to be a family friend helping Sophia uncover the truth, James gave her access to my files. My stomach dropped. He helped them? Unintentionally. James believed Sophia's version of events. He thought you really were a negligent husband and father. When Victoria asked for help gathering evidence to protect Sophia, he provided information about my investigation. Information that helped them stay ahead of you? Exactly. Victoria learned that Carmen was onto their scheme. She adjusted her strategy, created better forgeries, anticipated our moves. By the time I realized what was happening, Carmen had died, and Sophia was completely convinced you were the villain. David pulled out a more recent file that made my blood run cold. There's something else. Patricia isn't finished. The wedding humiliation was just the opening move. He showed me legal documents and bank records. Patricia has convinced Sophia to file a civil lawsuit against you for elder abuse and financial exploitation. They're claiming you stole over $200,000 from Carmen and that your negligence contributed to her death. The room spun around me. They want me arrested? They want you destroyed. Patricia's endgame isn't just Carmen's insurance money.
She wants to eliminate you completely and position herself as Sophia's only family. David opened another folder. Victoria has been working with attorney Marcus Webb. They filed preliminary paperwork claiming your crimes void any inheritance rights. They want to strip you of all legal relationship to Sophia and make Patricia her official next of kin. Can they succeed? With Victoria's forged evidence? Possibly. Elder abuse cases are prosecuted aggressively. If they convince a judge you systematically stole from and neglected your dying wife, you could face criminal charges and complete loss of parental rights. David reached into his desk and withdrew a sealed envelope marked with my name in Carmen's handwriting. She left this for you to be opened if Patricia escalated to legal action. Inside was a single sheet in Carmen's careful script. Eduardo, mi amor, if you are reading this, Patricia has moved beyond manipulation into warfare. She is trying to have you arrested and stripped of parental rights. You cannot let this happen. Not for your pride, but because if Patricia succeeds, she will control Sophia completely. Fight back. Use everything I've given you. Expose Patricia's lies not just to Sophia, but publicly. Show the world what grief and jealousy can drive people to do. Save our daughter from the people destroying her life while convincing her they love her. Burn down Patricia's world if that's what it takes to save Sophia's soul. David and I spent the next 2 hours developing our strategy. We had audio recordings of Patricia and Victoria planning their conspiracy. We had original documents proving their forgeries were fake. We had Carmen's testimony documenting years of manipulation. First, we stopped the lawsuit. I'll contact Marcus Webb and inform him his clients have committed multiple felonies. When I show him the evidence, he'll withdraw immediately. Then what? We go public. Local newspaper, social media, everything. We expose Patricia Valdez as someone who manipulated her dying sister's daughter for money. We show the world what Victoria Mansfield really is. David's expression hardened with determination. Most importantly, we save James and Sophia's marriage. My son married your daughter believing lies about her father. When he learns the truth, he'll help us reach Sophia. Will she believe it? She'll have to. Audio recordings don't lie, Eduardo. Forged documents are obvious when compared to originals. Patricia's conspiracy will crumble the moment we expose it. That evening, David arranged a meeting with James and Sophia at their apartment. He'd told his son there was urgent information about the Rodriguez family investigation without revealing specifics. When I arrived at their downtown apartment complex, my hands shook as I carried the briefcase containing 3 years of evidence. This conversation would either repair my relationship with my daughter or destroy it completely. James answered the door, looking uncomfortable. He was handsome, late 20s, with his father's intelligent eyes and gentle demeanor. Under different circumstances, I would have been proud to call him son-in-law. Mr. Rodriguez, he said politely, please come in. Sophia sat on their couch, arms crossed, expression hostile. She changed from her wedding dress into jeans and a sweater, but still looked beautiful. She also looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I don't know why you're here, she said without preamble. I thought I made it clear yesterday that I don't want to see you. Sophia, James said gently, just listen to what he has to say.
I set the briefcase on their coffee table and opened it. I'm here because your mother left me something before she died, something that explains why you hate me. I started with audio recordings. Patricia's voice filled the living room, laughing about turning Sophia against me. Victoria discussing forged documents. Detailed planning sessions outlining their strategy to destroy my life and steal Carmen's inheritance. Sophia's face went white as she listened to her beloved aunt plotting my destruction. James leaned forward, his expression darkening with each revelation. This is fake, Sophia whispered when the first recording ended. You made this up somehow. I played another recording, then another. Patricia's voice, Victoria's voice, discussions about specific forgeries, timelines matching exactly when Sophia had started questioning my behavior during Carmen's illness. The medical records, I said, pulling out both real documents and Victoria's forgeries. Side by side, look at the dates, fonts, medical terminology. Your mother's real records show I was present at every appointment, advocated for every treatment, spent our life savings trying to save her. James studied the documents with analytical precision. These forgeries are sophisticated, but definitely fake. The letterhead is wrong, the doctor's signature doesn't match, some medical terms weren't even used in 2021. The financial records, I continued, showing Carmen's real bank statements versus Victoria's manufactured evidence. I never stole from your mother. I gave her everything I had. As evidence mounted, I watched my daughter's certainties collapse. Every belief about her father, every justification for her hatred, every reason for cutting me from her life, all based on lies. No, she said, shaking her head. This can't be true. Patricia loves me. She's been taking care of me since Mama died. She's been helping me understand what really happened. Patricia has been poisoning you against me for 3 years, I said gently. She hired Victoria to create false evidence because she wanted Carmen's life insurance money. The only way to get it was convincing you I was a criminal. James was reading Carmen's letters, his face growing pale. Sophia, this is your mother's handwriting. These are her words. She knew what Patricia was planning and tried to protect your father. She's lying, Sophia shouted, tears streaming. Mama wouldn't have kept something like this from me. She would have told me if Patricia was lying. I handed her Carmen's final letter explaining why she hadn't revealed the cancer diagnosis or Patricia's manipulation. She was protecting you, mija. She didn't want you choosing between your father and aunt while she was dying. As Sophia read her mother's letters, James studied his father's investigation files. Horror crossed his face as he realized how he'd been manipulated. Dad told me you were neglecting Carmen. He showed me medical records suggesting you delayed treatment to save money. He said Sophia needed protection from a father who caused her mother's death. Those were Victoria's forgeries, I explained. Your father was trying to protect Sophia from lies, but Victoria was feeding him false information through you. James put his head in his hands. I gave Victoria access to Dad's files. I thought she was a family friend helping Sophia uncover truth. I helped them destroy you. You were manipulated too. Victoria convinced you that you were protecting the woman you love. But I wasn't protecting her, James said, voice breaking. I was helping poison her mind against her own father. I was part of the conspiracy that stole 3 years of your relationship. As if summoned by the revelation of her lies, Patricia Valdez chose that moment to arrive. She used her key. Apparently she had inserted herself so thoroughly into Sophia's life that she had access to her home. Sophia, darling, I brought dinner from... Patricia stopped when she saw me surrounded by evidence of her conspiracy. Her face cycled through surprise, calculation, then defiance. What is he doing here? I told you not to let him manipulate you anymore. Sophia, she said, voice hollow, did you hire Victoria to lie about Papa? Patricia's eyes darted to the audio equipment, documents spread across the coffee table, the dawning realization on James's face. She was smart enough to know her conspiracy had been exposed. Sophia, you have to understand. I was trying to protect you. Your father was... We have recordings, Patricia. Hours of recordings where you and Victoria plan exactly how to destroy my life and steal Carmen's inheritance. We have the forged documents, real documents, and Carmen's testimony about your manipulation. Patricia's defiance crumbled. For a moment, she looked like what she really was, a middle-aged woman whose jealousy and greed had driven her to commit crimes against her own family. Carmen always thought she was better than me. She married beneath her station and acted like she was happy. But I knew the truth. Deep down, she regretted choosing a maintenance worker over someone who could have given her the life she deserved. So you decided to destroy her husband after she died? I decided to give Sophia the inheritance she deserved. Carmen left everything to you and her, but you weren't worthy. You never were worthy of Carmen, and you certainly weren't worthy of raising her daughter. Sophia stood up, face streaked with tears, but voice steady. Get out. Patricia blinked. What?
Get out of my home. Get out of my life. Don't ever contact me again. Sophia, darling, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You manipulated me for 3 years. You made me hate my father based on lies. You destroyed my relationship with the only parent I had left because you wanted money. Patricia's face twisted with rage. Your father destroyed your relationship. He was never good enough for this family. The only person who destroyed anything was you, Sophia said, voice growing stronger. You took advantage of my grief to turn me into a weapon against an innocent man. And that's where part 2 of this story ends. Not with forgiveness, but with truth finally breaking through years of carefully constructed lies. Because sometimes the people who claim to love us most are the ones willing to destroy us for their own gain. And sometimes it takes losing everything to discover who really deserves our trust.